Every morning, the townsfolk of Noodleton woke to the chorus of the bubble-bird songbirds, whose bubbly chirps sounded exactly like giggles in a bathtub. Children slid down the twisty licorice lanes on their way to Frisbang School, where recess sometimes lasted longer than lessons, and where the class stapler wore a tiny monocle, and on Tuesdays a top hat. One particularly gleeful Tuesday, as the sun rose above the jellybean rooftops, something unusual happened. Instead of the usual sweet-scented breeze, a soft, swirling fog rolled into town. The kind of fog that seemed to hum a gentle tune and shimmer with tinsel when caught by the sunlight. It curled around lampposts, tiptoed into gardens, and made even the bravest truffle hounds pause at the gate. No one in Noodleton had ever seen fog that shimmered, much less one that sang. Rumours bloomed like wild marshmallow flowers. Was it magic? Was it a visitor? Or perhaps both? That morning, Mrs. Puddlepin, whose home was famously decorated with rainbow buttons, peeked outside and saw the shimmering fog weaving between her prize-winning sugar squash. With a soft gasp and a twinkle in her eye, she grabbed her red umbrella, which she always claimed could speak on stormy days, and tiptoed onto her porch. She wasn't alone for long. Mr. Huckleberry, the town's resident harmonica player, emerged from his polka-dot cottage with a loaf of fresh blueberry bread. Soon, the Anybean twins tumbled out of their wobbly house, each clutching a butterfly net, and more curious Noodletonians joined the gathering throng, all with wide eyes and wild ideas. Amid the murmurs and giggles, the fog began to swirl in place, forming the faint outline of a jovial figure in a patchwork coat and twirling peppermint cane. With every shimmer, laughter echoed faintly, familiar and yet strange, like a long-lost friend telling a favourite joke. "It's magic and a visitor," Mrs. Puddlepin declared, her umbrella tipping its own brim in agreement. Whoever, or whatever, had arrived in Noodleton was about to turn the town's delightfully odd world inside out in the most marvellous way. The figure grew clearer with each swirl of the glimmering fog, until, with a final twinkle, it stepped right out into the peppermint-scented air. He was tall and lanky, with shoes that squeaked like rubber ducks, and a hat that seemed to sprout glittery confetti whenever he nodded. A hush fell over the crowd, save for the birds, who kept up their giggling chorus. "Greetings, dear Noodleton," the visitor boomed, his voice warm as freshly baked cookies. "I'm Professor Riddleput, collector of curiosities, finder of fantastical friends, and bringer of the marvellous mist." The Anybean twins gasped. "Does your mist make magic?" Professor Riddleput grinned, and with a waggle of his peppermint cane, the mist danced and sparkled, painting quicksilver rainbows through the air. "That's up to you. The marvellous mist finds the dreamiest dreams and nudges them into daylight. It only needs a little imagination, a sprinkle of bravery, and most important, a pinch of Noodleton nonsense," he added with a wink. Mrs. Puddlepin's umbrella leaned eagerly forward, and might have made a tiny ahem sound. The townsfolk watched, breath held in anticipation. For just a heartbeat, the town was utterly still. And then, as if whisked by some unseen hand, a rush of giggles, sighs, and wild, wonderful hopes swept through Noodleton, and the day of the marvellous mist began. As the sun climbed higher over Noodleton, the sky became a canvas, awash with vibrant, bouncing polka dots. Violet, lemon, cherry, and a shade of green found only in the wildest dreams. The townsfolk blinked up in wonder, unsure whether to gasp or giggle. Even the giggle-birds were momentarily silenced by the spectacle overhead. Mayor Walkerspoon, not one to let an oddity disrupt order, even if she did wear a tutu that sparkled like soda bubbles, straightened her tiara and announced, "To Feathertop Park, everyone! We shall solve this merry mystery together." At the park, beneath a sky performed by polka dots, the townies found the culprit. Ollie the octopus, with his 8 arms tangled around an enormous, rainbow-tipped paintbrush. Splotches of colour smeared his thimbles, for Ollie loved wearing thimbles on all 8 tentacles, and his eyes were wide with embarrassment as he dabbed away at the clouds. "I just wanted to paint a path home from the Jellybean Festival," Ollie blubbered, feeling quite sheepish. Before anyone could reply, the polka dots above began to shimmer and sing. Each dot warbled a different note, harmonizing into shimmering tunes about friendship and adventure. Paint a path, and you may find that those who join will never mind. Every color, every hue brings your friends much closer to you. The townsfolk laughed and cheered, and even Riddleput tipped his hat to Ollie. "Well done, artist," he called. "No mistake can't be mended with a little song and kindness." Led by the polka-dotted chorus, they all danced through Feathertop Park, tentacled and otherwise, singing melodies about togetherness, making the most peculiar day in Noodleton's history the happiest one yet. As the music floated down from the brightly polka-dotted sky, a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of peppermint and jelly beans through the park. Ollie, still tangled in paintbrush and thimbles, looked shyly at the crowd. The Anybean twins scampered up and handed him a bouquet of wild marshmallow flowers. "Welcome to Noodleton, Ollie," they cheered. Mayor Walkerspoon twirled her tutu in delight. "From this day on, you're our official sky painter," she declared. The townsfolk, grinning and clapping, all agreed. It just felt right. Professor Riddleput, ever inspired by a dose of nonsense, conjured a floating easel for Ollie. "Whenever you miss home or want company, just paint it in the sky," he said. Ollie's 8 thimble-clad arms wiggled with joy. That afternoon, Feathertop Park became a festival of colour and laughter. Neighbours shared jelly beans and lemonade. Children bounced on imaginary clouds. Even the giggle birds seemed to learn a few new musical notes. Overhead, the sky changed again, now swirling with messages of hope, kindness, and dazzling portraits of the townsfolk painted mid-dance. So it was that Noodleton grew even brighter and friendlier, forever marked by polka-dot skies, singing colours, and the heartwarming memory that a little mix-up could lead to a lot of magic, especially with friends, old and new, by your side. As Noodleton buzzed with excitement for the annual marshmallow race, the rules were posted everywhere. No shoes required, but thimbles must be worn on your ears. The starting line gleamed with eager racers adjusting their polka dot and striped thimble ears, while Ollie, the official sky painter, floated above, painting cheerful encouragements between clouds. Charlie, usually found tinkering in his upside-down workshop, wheeled his marshmallow catapult to the line. He'd built it with a peppermint lever, a licorice safety net, and a dash of Noodleton mischief. On the mayor's signal, a tutu twirl and a bugle blast, Charlie vaulted himself into the air, sailing faster than a jelly bean on a slip and slide. But just as Charlie landed, marshmallow toes first, halfway to victory, his catapult rattled and sputtered, puffing out a sparkling cloud that floated over the crowd. The moment it touched a racer's nose, peals of laughter erupted. Soon, everyone, Charlie, Ollie, the Anybean twins, even the normally serious Mrs. Puddlepin, collapsed into fits of giggles. Spectators howled. The judges hiccuped with laughter. Even the giggle birds paused to take notes. No one could run, roll, or catapult forward without erupting into unstoppable chuckles. Thimbles flopped, marshmallows rolled off course, and the race line dissolved into hilarious mayhem. It seemed the marshmallow race would end not with a winner, but with an entire town doubled over in joyous, tearful laughter. And in Noodleton, that was exactly the kind of twist everyone secretly loved best. The giggle cloud swirled and bounced, growing fluffier with every peal of laughter, until it snaked its way over to the finish line itself, where it popped with a soft poof and showered the grass with miniature tickling marshmallows. Contestants tried to crawl or hop forward, but each attempt sent them into another round of helpless snorts and cackles. Mayor Walkerspoon, now breathless and wiping away laughter tears, glanced at the giggly tangle of racers and declared, "From now on, the first to stop laughing is the winner." Of course, this just made everyone laugh even harder. Charlie finally wriggled free of a pile of marshmallows, his thimble ears askew, but his grin stretching ear to ear. "I suppose invention isn't always about finishing first," he chortled. "Sometimes it's inventing the most fun along the way." Ollie swept by with his paintbrush, dabbing tiny laughing faces onto the marshmallows. All around, townsfolk were still rolling and giggling in delight. By the day's end, no one could quite remember who crossed the finish line first. But they all knew, without a doubt, that this marshmallow race was the most unforgettable yet. As dusk fell over Noodleton, the polka dot sky gleamed a little brighter, and the sound of laughter echoed down every twisty lane. It was decided. Next year's race would feature a prize not just for speed, but for the most creative giggle. In Noodleton, that seemed only fair. Late one evening, just as the laughter from the marshmallow race faded, a new mystery spread through Noodleton. Moon cheese had vanished from the moon. News travelled like jelly bean lightning, and it wasn't long before a brave team of young detectives formed to crack the case. Leading the group was Geraldine, the talking stapler with the sharpest memory in town, thanks to her daily spinach flakes, and her best friend Filbert, a peacock renowned for his fearless leaps and uncanny ability to sniff out secrets, especially if nuts or cheese were involved. They set out from Noodleton with a magnifying glass, a trusty flashlight, and Geraldine nestled in her portable fishbowl helmet atop Filbert's head. The enchanted forest beyond town was alive with whispering trees. Soft voices rustled through the leaves, carrying clues about sneaky footprints and shimmering cheese flakes left behind. "It's this way," Geraldine bubbled as her bowl glimmered in moonlight. Filbert scampered ahead, following the scent of mischief and Gouda. At last, deep within a hidden cave, they spotted a commotion. A troop of mischievous elephants, each sporting a tiny black mask and clutching wedges of glowing moon cheese. The elephants had set up a secret moon cheese heist club, and tonight was their grandest plan. A midnight cheese picnic under the stars. But Geraldine and Filbert, clever as ever, had their own wild idea to turn the elephants' mischief into a moonlit celebration Noodleton would never forget. One bright and strange morning in Noodleton, the great peppermint clock tower, famous for spinning its hands in a cheery whirl, simply stopped. In an instant, nothing happened on time. Morning stretched far past noon. Bedtime arrived with the sun, and midnight meals became newfangled breakfasts. Dewy pancake deliveries arrived when folks expected the mail. And Ollie the octopus accidentally painted yesterday's sky instead of today's. The wise old turtle, Tilly, who'd seen more sunrises than Noodleton had jelly beans, called for a solution. The time-twisting festival. Tilly claimed that the only way to persuade the time spirits was with the silliest, most upside-down dance the town could muster. Soon, Noodleton Square blossomed with giggling dancers, townsfolk hopping on one foot, the giggle birds twirling mid-air, and even Charlie inventing a hat that did the cha-cha. Geraldine the talking stapler and Filbert the fearless peacock still fresh with heroics from the Mooncheese caper, joined in happily. Geraldine blew timekeeping bubbles that popped in perfect rhythm, while Filbert spun in dizzying nut-powered figure eights, his tail looping like a clock's hand. In the midst of this laughter, the Mooncheese made a surprise comeback. The elephants, charmed by friendship, shared slices for the festival, their tiny masked faces aglow. As the festival's giddy frenzy reached its peak, the clock's hands shivered, twitched, and then began spinning once more, though with a gentle wobble, as if they too had caught the spirit of fun. From then on, Noodleton embraced its wibbly-wobbly time, delighted by midnight pancake breakfasts and the promise that with a little laughter and a dash of moon cheese, even the silliest problems could become magical memories. With time spinning, tumbling, and occasionally hiccuping along, Noodleton settled into its new wobbly rhythm. Neighbours met for sunrise thimble parades at midnight and moonlit tea parties at dawn. The town calendar became a whirl of surprises. Thursday sometimes popped into existence twice in a week, while the occasional Ollie's Day arrived as an extra, absolutely for fun holiday, devoted entirely to thimble painting and giggling. But something else began to grow in Noodleton. The spirit of adventure. Having solved the mysteries of moon cheese and unravelled tangled time, Geraldine and Filbert decided to form the Oddments Club, inviting any Noodletonian with a flair for the unusual. Together they explored hidden corners of town, from the upside-down library in Topsy-Turvy Lane to the secret garden behind Mrs. Puddlepin's house, where peppermint flowers sang lullabies at noon, or whenever it happened to be noonish. Meanwhile, Professor Riddleput set about inventing a gentle time tuner, a jolly contraption shaped like an accordion, which, when played with gusto, helped calm wobbly hours and cheer lagging minutes along. Of course, no one ever wanted time to become too sensible. The wobbles were half the fun, and so, in Noodleton, adventures piled up like extra Thursdays. Laughter rang out whenever the clock spun a new surprise, and the taste of moon cheese always brought back memories of midnight feasts, silly dances, and the peculiar, wonderful magic of a town that liked things just a bit out of order. On a sunny, peppermint-scented afternoon, the townsfolk of Noodleton gathered in the square as Professor Creamybean, his hair in wild tufts and his coat covered in wiggly gears, rolled out his latest invention, the giggle-o-matic. The contraption puffed and sputtered, glowing with rainbow lights and adorned with spiralling horns and ticklish, feathery levers. "Prepare to laugh harder than ever," the professor announced, throwing a switch. The giggle-o-matic whirred, filling the air with bubbles and tickling everyone with invisible laughter beams. Instantly, peals of giggles and howls of joy erupted across the square. But in a most unexpected twist, laughter made everyone lighter than air. First Ollie the octopus, then Mrs. Puddlepin's button-bedecked cottage, and then the entire crowd began to float, gently rising above the cobblestone streets. Townsfolk caught hold of each other and with surprised squeals discovered they could hop from one puffy cloud to another, as if playing a marvellous game of leapfrog in the sky. Amid the fluffy clouds, they stumbled upon a magical realm floating above Noodleton, a kingdom where giggly coconuts lounged with sly grins, wearing top hats and bow ties. These coconuts began sharing the greatest, silliest jokes ever told. What did the cloud say to the coconut? "Stop cracking up, I'm supposed to hold the rain." With each punchline, new ripples of laughter bubbled up, keeping the Noodletonians gently aloft. The townsfolk soon realized that as long as they giggled, they could visit this secret sky-high world, where joy and friendship had carried them higher than they ever dreamed. And so, in the clouds, Noodleton's adventures of laughter, unity, and a good joke or two soared to new heights. As Noodletonians hopped merrily from cloud to cloud, they collected jokes and giggly wisdom from the coconuts, some of whom claimed to be stand-up comedians in their past shells. Every laugh kept the townsfolk buoyant, and soon everyone, from Geraldine the stapler, secure in her bubble, to Filbert the peacock, had notebooks full of puns and a heart full of lightness. But there was one small problem. No one quite knew how to get back down to Noodleton. Professor Creamybean, cheeks rosy from guffaws, whipped out his emergency blueprints. Drawn on banana peels and licorice shoelaces, of course. Only one thing pulls people down from the sky faster than laughter, he declared, adjusting his polka dot bow tie. A truly spectacular group sneeze. It was then that Mayor Walkerspoon, ever resourceful in her glittering tutu, remembered the tickle feather trees that grew abundantly near Feathertop Park. "We must gather a tickle feather for every floating friend," she called. So the giggly coconuts joined in, some wielding tiny feather dusters, others reciting sneeze-inducing riddles. At last, with every Noodletonian ready, they each gave their nose a tickle, and with one grand town-wide achoo, everyone gently floated back down, landing, with a soft giggle and a happy sigh, in the square below. From that day forward, Noodleton celebrated two things above all else: laughter that could lift you up, and friends clever enough to bring you safely home. And in the clouds above, the giggly coconuts waved, promising they'd always be ready with a new joke if Noodleton ever returned. As the thimble parade twirled and bounced through Noodleton's colourful streets, Larry the llama and his giggling, high-stepping thimbles invited everyone, young and old, to join their conga line of silliness. Thimbles sang songs, townsfolk laughed until they cried, and the air was positively sparkling with contagious joy. Meanwhile, the bubblegum pirates, now reformed with sticky fingers and happy hearts, cheered from the docks after their epic bubble-blowing contest. Captain Chewy tipped his bubblegum hat, agreeing to use the treasure to build a playground in Jellybean Forest, where both pirates and townsfolk could play together. The air was filled with the sweet scent of bubblegum, jelly beans, and happy laughter. And then, as the sun began to set, Noodleton launched its annual Friendship Balloon Festival. Food-shaped balloons, spaghetti, cupcakes, smiling pickles, and dancing sandwiches soared above the town in a rainbow of colour. The parade ended in a jubilant finale as thimbles parachuted from great heights, tossing cupcakes to delighted crowds below. Friends old and new shared treats in mid-air, savouring not just the sweets, but the magical feeling of togetherness. From that day onward, whenever the mist rolled over Noodleton, everyone knew it wasn't just fog. It was the giggles, songs, and stories of the marvellous friends who made the adventure possible. And so they all lived marvellously ever after, in a town where thimbles danced, pirates played fair, and balloons floated with friendship. The end.